Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to continue our tutorial series with the asset placement. So we're going to start grabbing Megascans and we're going to place it all over the world so we can achieve that look that I show you in the scene right here. And I'm going to show you some techniques on how to achieve this. So there's going to be talk about the Mega Assemblies. I'm going to show you how to group meshes and it's another unconventional way of scattering assets around the world that you can use with some of the assets that we have here. If you like this video series, there's a link down below for my Patreon. If you want to help out the channel, it really goes a long way. Otherwise, just hitting the like button and leaving a comment helps out a lot with the engagement and putting my videos out there. You can also follow me on Twitter or join our Discord if you have any questions about the tutorials. There's plenty of people there, over 500 users. I think this is going to be one of the longest videos in this series, so there's usually timestamp in the description down below if you want to get to a specific section. And let's get started. Okay, so what we need to do is get our assets in here. Now for that, like I mentioned in one of my previous videos, all you have to do is go to Quixel Bridge. Make sure you are signed in, which we already are. And now we're gonna download the assets now because I've already built this map once. That means that I already have downloaded the assets. So anything that you download from Quixel Bridge should be here in this little computer looking thing, and which is pretty much your local assets. So you can see I have 25 3D assets over here and I can just add them to my project. One of the things that I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to put a screenshot right here, so you can take a screenshot or pause the video if you want. That way you can know which are exactly the assets that I'm using and you can just browse for them. The way that you're going to do that is, let's say we're going to look for those Icelandic rock plates. So we type Icelandic. You can type Icelandic and it will show you the whole collection. Go to 3D assets and everything should be here. And you just look for the one that I'm showing you, or you can just type the whole name. And it will show you exactly these assets at the beginning, and it will always show you related assets, but just refer to that list that I put before so you can get all the assets that I'm having right here. Now, once you have all the assets that you need, all you have to do is make sure they are in nanite and then just add them to the project. Now this process is going to take a little bit. You're gonna feel like your computer is almost frozen. It's actually not. It's doing the importing, so depending on what kind of hardware you have, you may have to be patient a little bit longer or a little bit less. And there we have it, our first Megascan, and I can drop our first Megascan right here. Now there is something to it, and just like I mentioned in the surfaces, you're gonna see that this map is black and white, and it should not be black and white because this is the packed texture map. So what we need to do is double click this map and make sure that over here instead of alpha you change that to default. It's going to take a little bit, but it's going to give you the accurate maps. After that, just wait for the shaders to compile and we should be ready to use our mesh. And one of the things I like to do when I'm placing these meshes is I'm going to uncheck this because it gets a little bit annoying, and I want to make sure I'm doing it at the level that I need. Okay, that's our first Megascan in the world. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fast forward this part because I'm going to be bringing in all the assets. You already know how to do that, so I'll see you in a second. Okay, we have all 3 assets that we need for this level in here. This is one recommendation of mine. You can just keep them here and in their folders. But what I like to do is I like to have them here in the level somewhere, and when I'm done, I'll delete them just so it's easier to get them. I've seen some people, some of the people that do the speed level design, they usually have all the assets in one folder. That's another good way to do it too. But I'm just going to throw everything here on the level and we'll select them and go by that, and that also helps us to determine size, which I think is very important. All right, since this is our shot, I'm gonna take them out of here. Let's just take them somewhere It's not gonna be in our shot. Like around here in this corner. Another thing that I like to do is we are going to need space for this kind of shot. So I'm going to move these things all the way down to the beginning because there's not a point where the camera is actually going to turn back. So I don't mind being close to the border, but I do need depth. So I'm just going to grab everything here and move it back. An easier way to do that actually is I'm going to turn off these and we're going to go into the top view and we're going to grab all these things and just move them back. Just turn on the landscape to see where everything should be, and whoops, we missed that, so there you go. Kind of like around here, so that way we have a lot more depth when we are making our shot. It's telling us captures need to be rebuilt. We'll do that later. I'm just gonna grab this and throw it all the way over here. There you go. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is I'm going to show you a couple of ways where you can put the Megascans together, because you can throw in them one by one. That is one way to do it, but it's just going to be too slow and it can be a bit of a pain. So the two ways that I found, well, it's actually three ways. The three ways that I found is, one, you can just bring them all together and group them. Let's actually look at that version right now. So for that, I'm going to use this one right here. So this is one of the things that I use to make the floor of what you saw in that scene. Now what we need to do is we need to make this bigger. So let's make it around, let's just make it 4. All right, that should be enough. One thing that you need to take into account is how is your assets going to be seen in the shot. This is why I decided to do the shot before even bringing all the assets, because that determines what kind of assets I'm using and how they're going to be placed. Can I rescale them? Can I not rescale them? Because whenever you rescale an asset, remember the texture is going to lose a little bit of fidelity, but again, it all depends where your camera is standing. So let's say we're going to use this and we want to cover our large area with different pieces of this. Actually, let's put the 3, it should be fine. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take out another one like this, just to make a bigger area. Whoops, not up. And let's just do it like this. Some of the areas, and one of the things about nanite is we don't worry about overlapping that much. It actually looks a lot better. So as you can see, we kind of have a wider area that's being covered by one single asset. So let me just take and do it this way. Okay, so one thing that we can do is we can select all these and we can right click and make it a group. So right here, or you can press Ctrl G to make it a group, and now we have one group and it has a pivot in that place. And what you can do is you can actually grab that group and you can hold Alt and drag, and you can just cover a lot of ground with this. All right, so this is one way to go about it. The second way to go about doing something like this is by using the Mega Assemblies. I actually had a video where I showcase how to do a Mega Assembly before, so I'm just going to show you real quick, but if you wanted to go in depth on how to do that, please visit that video where I actually go into what's Mega Assembly and all the parts of it. For right now, I'm just going to save this level. I'm gonna go to File, I'm gonna click New Level, I'm gonna click an empty level, and I'm going to start making my Mega Assembly. Now for this, I don't need lights or anything. I'm just going to start throwing all my assets in here. Okay, I have all my assets just like I did last time, and I'm going to, instead of creating a group, I'm going to create a mega assembly. This is a huge group of assets that you can just bring into your level. And again, there's going to be a link in the description below where I actually break it down, because that's a recent video that I did on how to make these. So I'm going to go with 3 for this, and we're going to do the same thing that we did around there. Difference is I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees over here. I'm going to do 70 over here, and something like this. So we're covering somewhat of a nice big area with this. You can actually select these. Oh, I'm holding the key of shift so I can select them all, and control like that, and rotate it just so we can have some variation, and that way we have a larger surface like this. Okay. One of the things I like to avoid when making these is make sure I'm not making a pattern, so that's why I go all the way up here just to make sure that there isn't a pattern going on around here, which looks fine. We could break that pattern with anything else over here, but this looks okay. Alright, and once we are done creating these, I'm actually going to delete everything else, because otherwise they're just going to come with us on our mega assembly. And I'm going to select them all. Right click, you can right click here if you want to, and we're going to create from selection, type, level instance, pack blueprint, and pivot type. I'm just gonna choose the center, that's fine. If you watch my video on the mega assemblies, I actually show how to make the pivot with an empty actor, so you can customize it a lot easier. Now we're gonna hit OK. And over here, I'm actually going to create a new folder, call it Mega A. Let's put assembly so it doesn't get a funny words. Double click it. Now we're going to call this BP underscore volcanic ground mega save. Okay, now you need to save it. Now I'm gonna create a new folder for the blueprint itself. So actually the BPP is the blueprint word, so I'm gonna delete this from that. I'm gonna save it here, and we also need to save the level. So I like to save everything in this folder, that way it doesn't clutter everything else. LVL, there you go, save. And we're done. You got your mega assembly right here. As you can see, we can grab it and we can just move it around or make copies of it. And we only have one thing to deal with over here in the world outliner. Otherwise, you're going to have thousands of these when we actually start building the level. So let me get back to our original level. Alright, so here we are in our original level, and the way we're going to use this is by clicking and dragging it, and there you go. We have our mega assembly, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill all my floor that's in the shot. I'm going to fill it with this because it's the main ground that we're going to be using. So I'm just going to bring it over here, put it here, make sure it's visible in the camera, and there you go. So I need the gizmo to be visible in the camera. Let's just go to perspective. There you go. Awesome. Go back to camera actor and we can start building. So maybe pull it back. You could also play with these right here, actually on your right. If you don't see the gizmo, you can just play with these. And this will help out a lot. So I'm just going to do these and maybe raise it up. Let me get out of this and just raise it up a little bit. So right now it's not meshing super well with the ground, and it's because of the coloring. We're going to take care of that in a little bit. Another thing that I like to do is rotate it. So again, there is no pattern when we put them out, just rotate them a little bit. All right, so I'm going to put these down, and I'm just going to time lapse this, otherwise it's going to take forever. Okay, a couple of things that you need to take into account is that right now I'm doing things by object pivot. So that's why whenever I take something out and I rotate it, you can see that it keeps that position. The pivot keeps looking at that way because it's the object position, it's not the world position. If I switch it to world, you can see that it actually changes, which we don't want. I'm gonna keep it there and I'm gonna keep going. Now we have almost all the assembly that we need for the foreground, which I think is fine and dandy the way it is right now. Now what we need to do is we need to make something for the background. For things that are in the background, I usually scale things up because again, the resolution is all about where your perspective is located. So if your camera is located here and I'm going to be shooting whatever is around here, then everything that's in here can be a little bit lower resolution because it's not going to be in front of the camera, and we're also going to be using depth of field to give this a little bit more realism. That also helps us hiding the resolution, and it's something that I'm going to do later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take something out and I'm going to scale it to twice its size, so it's a lot bigger, and I'm just going to throw it in around here, and I'm going to cover all the ground all the way up to this pillar, and I'll be right back in a minute. Okay, now around here I can see the extent of my floor. So once I add the atmospheric, certain things are going to be blurred out, but I'm gonna keep going until I cover this whole pillar, and we'll be back. Okay, I think we're fine, and once we fix the colors of the ground, we'll be even better. Now to see how everything's looking, press the letter G, and it actually gets rid of the icons. The letter G is what's called the game mode. If you go over here and you press, you can see you toggle the game view. The game view allows you to get rid of all the icons that are on screen. So I'm just going to keep things this way, and we're going to make a folder here because this is getting full of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here on the first one. I'm going to go all the way down here. I'm going to shift click. I'm going to right click and move to create new folder. And I'm going to click, make it Megas. There you go. Like that. And now they're in a folder, and I no longer have everything cluttered. Now I know what some of you are all saying. What was the point of the landscape if you're pretty much covering all with the asset? Well, it served as our base. It served to make a place where we're going to put everything. So that was the point of it. And it's going to give us a little bit of like variations with the assets. So this is kind of like a depression that's going on right here. And we're going to talk about coloring right now. But before that, I need to fix the field of view of this camera. So we're gonna go into our camera, gonna go down here to, let's see, focus settings, and focus method should always be manual. And for the focus distance, right now it's, I think, 100,000. That's a lot, so I'm going to reduce it to, let's say, 600. Okay, so now that you see that what's closer is actually sharper and what's further away, it's actually a lot blurrier, which is what I usually like when doing this kind of setting. If you want to see where your depth of field is at, you can click on these, draw debug focus plane, and it's going to show you exactly where it is, and you can move this. So everything that's not on the purple plane, it's being shown. So right now I'm going to leave it at 800. So this is the sharpest part of the picture. I'm going to uncheck that. And now we're going to talk about coloring. So I'm going to get out of my camera and we're going to go to our landscape. So there are two ways that we could approach this. We could change the coloring of our Mega Assembly, or we could change the color of our ground. The way you do that is by going into the map. So just click in your Mega Assembly. You can actually double click it if you want to get to the material that it had. And you go to the instance mesh and double click its material, and here you are. The material is very similar to the surface materials in many ways. So we could change the albedo tint, the albedo colors, or we could do that to the landscape. Now in this case, because I rather have this look, I'd rather it be not as dark as the landscape is right now, I'm actually going to do it to the landscape and not these. But let me show you what would happen. So if we wanted to change the tint of our asset, it reacts exactly the same way as our landscape. If you watch my previous video, so we go into albedo control, again, saturation and all that, just reacts the same way that it does on surfaces. And if you wanted to go back to the way it was, just click not on this one right here on the top. Like that, there you go. So I'm going to go into the landscape, double click this surface, and we're going to start playing with the albedo tint. So we may have to modify later on when we have all the atmospherics in here and we can accurately gauge the color of our scene. But for now, I'm just going to go into albedo tint, and sometimes this works. So I'm going to get the eyedropper tool and click here. Click OK. Now that actually made it much darker. So one way we can go about it is we can actually go into saturation, make it 0.8. It makes it a little bit brighter. We can go to brightness. We can increase it. As you can see, it's getting a lot brighter. It's getting closer. We can play with the contrast. The contrast actually will make it darker. So let's say if we do a contrast of 0.8, that gets it much closer to what we need. So maybe we can dial our brightness a little bit down, and we go into the albedo tint and make it something reddish. Okay, but not so much. Now it does need a little bit more, so I'm going to, there you go. Getting closer to where almost the same, like that. There you go. So now we have pretty much the same ground all around. The only difference in color are these pebbles right here and some of the shading that's going on. All right, so let's get back to our camera. As you can see now, everything looks pretty much the same color, which is very good, and it's exactly what we needed. Now, one of the things that I did on the scene was I did something to ground the pillars a little bit more, and we're going to do just that. So in order to ground the pillars, we're going to go out of our camera and we're going to travel all the way over here. And we're going to grab, let's say, let's grab this one, and we're gonna grab, this one has too much foliage in it. We're gonna grab, this one also have foliage in it. We're gonna grab these two. So I'm gonna take this, this, and this. We're gonna make copies and we're gonna bring it over there. And we're gonna use it to help us ground this a little bit. So let's try with this one first. And before we do anything, what we need to do is match the coloring of these rocks. So if we go into the material, go albedo tint and albedo control. Now we know we need to give it kind of like a reddish color. And we could go with some of the numbers that we have in our landscape. So let's say double click here, and we have for our saturation 0.8, 11 on the brightness. So let's see if that results here. Sometimes it does. That's way too off. So let's say get it all the way around here. Desaturate it a little. It's playing with the contrast. And like that. That's actually very close. So what I'm gonna do is, this actually, it's giving me some trouble, so I'm just going to sync it in and do this. Oops. Let's get rid of this angle and just angle it a little bit like that. And we're just going to throw this rock all around here. I think I can afford to make it a little bit bigger, so I can sink it a little bit further in. And what I'm seeing is there is two of these over here. So what I can do to fix that is rotate this one, and there you go. That gets rid of that. And as you can see, it looks like rocks accumulated around here. Now we can ground it a little bit more by adding the smaller pebbles that we brought over with this little asset right here. We could even use this one. Actually, let me make sure I color match this. Okay, there you go. Those are the numbers in case you want to copy those for your scene. And let's see what we can do with this. It's maybe, okay, it's kind of not matching it. So we may just reduce the brightness a little. Okay, now I think it matches a little bit more. Maybe do the saturation all the way down to 1. And now we have some rock variations over here. I'm actually going to throw these around like this. Probably this way so we have more pebbles in the end. So that's what we want. And we can just do it this way. There you go. Make it 1.4. Is that too big? Just go back to 1. And let's see how it looks in our camera. Oh, looking a lot better with these here. Even though it's just something very, very subtle, it does add a lot to it. Okay, getting much better. Let's see if that other asset helps us out a little bit more. Because sometimes we can add things and it can look better. Other times we can add things and it can just break what we're making. So again, let me color match this. I go to my material. Let's go to tint. I think this is fine. I'm gonna desaturate it just a tad. And we're gonna brighten it up. Okay, let's get it closer to the rocks. I just pulled out a copy, and this one maybe needs to be a little bit bigger because that's too small. So I'm just going to do let's do 1.5 and see what happens. Okay, I think we need to match this better in regards to coloring. Okay, I think here is fine, and there you go. Actually, the problem is these rocks over here, so make it smaller. Maybe it won't interfere as much in terms of coloring. There you go. Let's do saturation like that, 0.4, and I think we're good. Okay, so the other way that we could start doing these assets is by using the Foliage tool. So the Foliage tool is usually reserved for, how you guess it, foliage, but it can also be used for other assets. So you can actually add rocks to it, which in this settings we have a ton of rocks, so that's probably not necessary. You could also add regular meshes like this one that we have here. So we're actually going to go into Foliage editing mode, and as you can see, we have this menu up here. So I did it wrong. Before we go into Foliage editing mode, I actually need to locate this asset. So if you click this little magnifying glass, it will take you to where the assets are. I'm actually gonna go back there, and we're gonna start dropping these. So the one we're using there is this one. Can drop it here. We could drop another one if we wanted to, and you can see that there is a 0 over here. That means there are 0 of them here in the level. And as you can see, we have our brush, which is we can make it bigger or smaller depending on what we want to do. Okay, now what we can do is we can start painting. So if I were to paint right here, and you can see these two are ticked, that means they're both selected. And if I start painting, you can see the number goes up, and it's just painting a lot of these meshes. So this is a good way to scatter around assets that are rock based. So there's usually a lot of rock pile assets inside Quixel, and this is a good way to just scatter them all around and get a ton of rocks in your scene, which I'm not gonna do, but that's a way to do it. So if I uncheck this one, then I'm only going to be painting with this asset. Now let's look at some of the properties here. So we have density, we have radius, what we're going to touch. This is how much dense you want the assets to be painted within your brush. We have the scale, so you can keep it from 1 to 1. This will keep it exactly all of them at the same scale. We could do, let's do something exaggerated from 0.2 to 3. And you can see that I have all kinds of different scales all around here. And we have over here a couple of rotational options. So align to normal means that its pivot, it's going to be aligned to the normal of the things that you have here. So right now I have filters, I have landscape selected. You can also add static meshes. You can add foliage on top of foliage or translucent. BSPs are Unreal Engine geometry, which I don't have, so I'm not gonna do that. Now over here, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to uncheck align to normal, because since there's a ton of slopes here, it's going to rotate a lot. So I just took that out. I'm going to take out random yaw as well, and I'm just gonna place some of them here. And again, one of the issues of doing this, and I could reduce the difference in scale. So let's do from 0.8 to 1.2. And the density, let's do 60%. And there you go. So again, this is one way to scatter these kinds of assets. The problem with these is they do have, and let me uncheck this, so they are aligned to the landscape and not the static meshes. The problem with these is they do have this kind of like undulating upwards of this mesh, which doesn't help. This usually helps a lot with meshes that are a little bit more grounded. So if everything is pointed down, this actually works very well. So I'm not gonna use this for this particular scene. I just wanted to show you that there was this option if you wanted to use it. Now we're gonna play with the foliage tool later in other levels that we're going to be building in this series. But for now, let's focus on grounding these pillars a little bit more. So I'm gonna go back to my selection mode, and I think this looks okay. And make sure, always make sure that the opening part is pointing another way. I'm just gonna do this. Let's see how it looks. Wow, that actually looks like it belongs. It's looking very nice. And if you look at it from afar, it looks a lot better. So I'm actually going to grab these, put some of them here, maybe around here, and there you go. There's a little bit of that mesh that was showing out, like that. And one of the beautiful things that we can do, because this pillar is in the background, we can actually grab everything here and just throw it over here. So I'm just going to hold control. I'm going to grab all these. I think that's as much as we have. I may have more, but I'm just going to go to world pivot and hold Alt and drag it out. And we're just going to place it around here. And rotate it a little bit just so it doesn't look like it's exactly the same. And awesome. So let's go back to our camera and see how it looks. Perfect. So now it looks like these pillars are actually part of this world, because if we grab all these, so I'm just going to grab all these and turn them off, you can see that they're fine. And I could actually also turn these off as well. It doesn't look bad, but the problem is I want them to look as if they came out of the ground, and not just that there's a little bit of ground accumulating there. Because another way that I could go about this is by adding more of this brown material on top. So if I get out, we could grab one of these Mega Assemblies and put it up, and then do like this, and maybe vault it over a little bit like that. Go up, vault it over a little bit more. Then we hold Alt, and you can do this with rotation as well. You just get it out here this way. me see how this looks on the camera. So we could make it look as if the dirt is piling on as well. I'm not a fan of that. I actually like my rocks a lot better. So I'm going to undo all that. So some of the assets I didn't end up using just because either A, was breaking my immersion, or B, they did have some foliage in there which defeats the purpose of this kind of world that we're building. All right, everybody, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to subscribe and click that bell for notifications so you can be notified of the coming videos, because we're going to keep going with this series. Don't forget to join our Discord, where we have a lot of people and myself to help you out with your question. Follow me on Twitter for the latest updates. Don't forget the link for the Patreon if you want to help out the channel. There's some goodies for you there, and I'll see you in the next video.